Good evening, everybody, and this is another live show. I know I've put it together really late tonight, but yeah, thank you if you're coming on to watch. If you're not watching live and you're watching on catch up, then thank you for visiting my channel. It's all black and white TV, and also if you like what you see, then please hit those like buttons, as it really helps my channel grow and helps push this channel up the search settings so people can find the channel a bit more easier. That sounds a mouthful, up the search settings, but yeah, if you can do that for me, that would be absolutely fantastic. And also, if you're new to the show, then new to the channel, also even click the subscribe and the bell button, and that will also notify you when any video comes live or anything is uploaded. So, guys, tonight we're talking about Newcastle United's famous games, and we're going to have a look back at some of the memories, past and present, of some great games that we've actually played. So we're going to delve into the first one. Now, the first game is the FA Cup final on the 7th of May 1955. We beat Manchester City 3-1 and at Wembley's famous Towers. So in that game, we did so well. To beat a good Man City team at that time. Jackie Milburn scored after 45 seconds from a Len White corner. That was the fastest ever goal in the Wembley Cup final at that time, but it was surpassed in 1997 by Roberto Di Matteo for Chelsea against Middlesbrough. But this game, 3-1. In the 50s, we were pretty good in the FA Cup. What a great win that is. Any cup win's fantastic. But to win the FA Cup then, absolutely brilliant. But we won it in 1951 and 52 as well. But in 53 and 54, we weren't so good. We went out early. But in 1955, we set the record straight and we beat Manchester City in that final, as I say, 3-1. Absolutely brilliant. Well before I was born, well before my time, and I like to think now I'll see a trophy in my lifetime before, but yeah, Man City that day had their most famous German goalkeeper in goal, Bert Trautmann, as well, and he pulled off a string of great saves as well. But yeah, a fantastic game, which Newcastle went on to win 3-1. Goals came from Milburn, Mitchell in the 52nd minute, and Hannah in the 59th minute. Man City equalised on 45 minutes, and at that time there was 100,000 attended that game as well. And absolutely brilliant. And it's nice when you can win a trophy and bring it back home. And the FA Cup, I suppose that's why it has a special place in our hearts as Newcastle fans, because we did so well in the 50s in the FA Cup, and we won it 3 times. So we were pretty rampant in the 50s, and like I say, it was well before my time, but I just thought I'd bring that one up because that was one of the great games at that time. So another great game I'm going to go on to. We played a team called Ushpest Doza, and that was in the Fairs Cup, the Intercities Fairs Cup final on the 11th of June 1969. Now we won over there in Hungary 3-2. We actually won 6-2 on aggregate because they played a 2-legged final. But yeah, we did really, really well. We got past the likes of Feyenoord, Sporting Lisbon, Real Zaragoza, Torreón Setúbal, and Glasgow Rangers to reach the final against Ushpest Doza. And what a great time. And back then, 69, that was 3 years before I was born. I dread to think what the actual celebrations were like. If anybody's old enough to remember that, if you don't watch this live, please drop comments in below and let me know, because, as I say, we just seemed to be a rampant team back then. And yeah, to win any European Cup is such a triumph. And let's hope we get a European Cup one of these days. I don't think there's one too far away. Hopefully, I'd be happy even if we won a Europa Conference League trophy. That would be absolutely fantastic. But let's see where we get to. But on Ush Pestosa, again, they were at the time they were one of the greatest teams in Hungary, and they were a cracking team. And this was under Joe Harvey's leadership as well. I mean, first leg, 60,000 full house at St. James's Park, and I mean, that's just, and then back then there was no like all seat stadiums and things like that, so everybody stood. It's just brilliant. But to win any European trophy is absolutely fantastic. It makes our history look great, and yeah, absolutely brilliant. And to beat someone like Ush Pestosa at the time, they were regarded as, I say, one of the best teams in Europe in Hungary. Yeah, was a major coup in our part. But yeah, absolutely fantastic. And like I say, I would love to see another trophy this in the European competition, whether it's Champions League or Europa Conference League. Yeah, that would be absolutely fantastic. And yes, Carl, I've just sent you the link, mate. But yeah, another great game. And like I say, we won 6-2 on aggregate. And well deserved. So yeah, absolutely fantastic. Another great game. And as I say, the attendance was 60,000. Our lineup for the first leg was Willie McFall, Craig Clark, Gabe Burton, Moncur, Scott Robson, Davies, Aaron Toft, and Sinclair and Foggin came on as a sub. In the first leg, Moncur got 2 goals and Scott scored the other goal. And in the second leg, the team again, it was the same team again. Again, Foggin came on for Scott in the second leg. And second leg, we won 3-2 with goals from Moncur, Aaron Toft, and Foggin, the substitute. And for Ush Pestosa, it was Janos and Gorosh. So yeah, two great goals there. Right, here he is. Good evening to you, Carl. How are you?
I'm all right, mate. Yourself?
Yeah, not too bad, mate. I'm just going through some great games, I mean, first of all, I was talking about the FA Cup back in the 50s, and
I was a bit out of born then.
No, I was nowhere near born then either. But we had some great cup games back then. I mean, we were winners in 51 and 52. Sadly, we didn't do very well in 53 and 54 because we went out early. But we won it again in 55 against a strong Man City team, 3-1 at Wembley in front of 100,000. And the great Bert Troutman was in goal for Man City. And what a keeper he was, a German, one of the best keepers in the world probably at that time. And, and this is why I think we've got such a love affair with the FA Cup, because, we've done so well in this competition. And any win in a cup is great, and I mean, that day, I mean, when we beat City, Jackie Milburn scored the fastest goal in the FA Cup at that time. But that was after 45 seconds. But obviously in 97, that record was then beaten because Roberto Di Matteo for Chelsea scored the fastest goal against Middlesbrough in that 97 final.
I remember that one.
Yeah, so absolutely, but it's great that we've had record in history again. I mean, what do you think about the 50s where we had 3 cup wins in that time?
I mean, it's obviously I've watched some of the games back just to see how it was, because obviously I wasn't born in that era. But it's just, I think the older people generation who've had a bit of success, then into the dire over like the late 70s and 80s, when we've sort of went nearly to dropping out of the old second division and things like that, and then a little bit of success with Keegan coming back, then obviously a bit of turmoil, then Bobby coming back, and then obviously after Bobby, it's been pretty dire, hasn't it? And then obviously now, so going back to those particular games in the 50s, obviously, you know what the Geordies are like. If there's something going on, that's a celebration, we do like to celebrate. So I do know, even when we got beat off Liverpool in one of the cup finals, is it that 70? Is it
73? I think 74.
And when they came back, it was as if we'd won, because the jump in. So I think it would have been amazing to experience the players that played for Newcastle back then, and obviously it would have been amazing to experience the buzz around the city and around the region. But hopefully, we might go. We had it early in the 90s, didn't we? Where we had was it 2 back-to-back finals? We ended up playing against the two best sides in the country at the time, in Man United and Arsenal, in the 2 finals, and then obviously the semi-final. I think that might have been a couple of years later when Rob Lee scored against Chelsea, the header.
Gustavo Poyet destroyed us again.
Yeah, but going back to it, mate, like, look at those games, like, that I can remember of Wembleys and stuff like that. So to see your team win, like, it must be an amazing feeling. I mean, I've been fortunate to be at Wembley to watch a final in a different sport, where the team that I was supporting in another sport actually won. So it is an amazing feeling to get to the final and to win, and then obviously you have that homecoming. So I'm just hoping with the return of the form of Newcastle, and obviously a cup competition, that we can go deep in it. And with a bit of luck, mate, we get to the final. And I think if we get to a one-off game, we'll give anybody a game these days.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Alan says hi, Tony. Hi, Alan. And Alan also says he can remember when he was a Ben, when Rangers invaded the pitch at St James's Park in the First Cup. So I think that was I think if I remember, that was the semi-final. And that wouldn't surprise me with the Rangers players, Rangers fans, sorry. I mean, I don't know if you can remember more about that, Alan, but what was it? Because Rangers lost, they invaded the pitch, or I probably imagine it was, but but Alan can certainly remember that. And Gary says, "Good evening, Tony. Evening to you, Gary, as well, mate. How are you?" But I mean, you go back to the 50s. We won the FA Cup well in the 50s. You go back to 69. We won a European Cup in 69. And that was the last major trophy as a team, as a club, we won. I know, we won an Intertoto Cup, but you can't class that as a major trophy. Where
no,
but the first cup at the time, it's like the UEFA Cup as it was. That's now the Europa League. But that was a big major trophy, and to win something like that against one of the best teams in Hungary as well, and in Europe.
Yeah.
And on the way, I mean, I don't know if you heard me, Carl, but on the way to that final, I mean, we beat some huge teams on the way to that final. And we went past Feyenoord, Sporting Lisbon, Real Zaragoza, Vitoria, Setúbal, and Glasgow Rangers to reach the 2-legged final against Pestosa. So, I mean, some big names there. I mean, Real Zaragoza, I mean, you don't really hear much of them now. I think they're in like the second division in Spain now, but they used to be a great team at one time, and but all of a sudden they've just dropped, But yeah, I mean, but like
It
I
was.
say, back then that was
Oh my God.
that.
I'm just looking at. Sorry, I'm just looking there, Tony. And obviously it was a two-legged affair, where, as you said, the first leg was 3-0 at St James's on my bloody birthday, on the 29th, on my bloody birthday. And then obviously the second leg, was about 10 days later. But yeah, just looking at the sides there, mate. As you said, that last major trophy that we had, first leg against Feyenoord winning 4-0, losing the second leg 2-0, which I think we spoke about this in a conversation the other day, that if you're ever in Europe, I don't know what it is, but I'd always want to try and play the away leg first, so you know exactly where you stand. Whereas that one, and then obviously you say we got Sporting 1-1 away. You know what you need to do with the second leg at 1-0 at home. Real Zaragoza 3-2 away, and 2-1 at home. So I think it was 4-4 in total. Obviously, I think we got beat in the first leg and won the second leg, and it went through on away goals. And then Victoria Distrital 6-4 winners, and then obviously Rangers. No matter what team you go, wherever you go, whatever competition it's in, Rangers or Celtic, at any of their two grounds, you're not going to get a game on your hand, because every now and then they perform an unbelievable the atmosphere, so that would have been interesting. And as I said to you, the skipper scored twice, and then obviously Scott scored again as well. But that was a decent side. Looking at some of the players that played for there, pretty much it was apart from Preben Arnatoft, obviously one of the forwards, the rest of the squad as well, when you look at it, was all UK, United Kingdom, Northern Ireland, England, Scotland and Wales players.
Yeah.
Which is unbelievable, really. You had 10 out of 11 players, and even the substitute was English.
Yeah, I mean, Alan says, I was at Wembley for the League Cup final against Man City when the Mackham scored with an overhead kick. That must have been, I think, the 76 final. KLW says, you lads, as I, must be over the moon that we really feel that we're going to win something over the next 3 seasons. Do you know what? Well, to be honest with you, KLW, at the start of the season, I gave a prediction, and I said we would win the Carabao Cup this year and finish 7th. That was my prediction at the start of the season. The reason I target the Carabao Cup, because we have been deep in that competition before, but unfortunately we lost to Brentford and we went out on a whimper. But this time we're a totally different team with a whole different manager. And if we get past Palace, which we should hopefully do, get past Palace, then you look at these teams like Man City, like Liverpool, like Chelsea, they all play their weekend sides because they all focus on Premier League and European competition, especially Champions League. So if we can get right up to the semi-finals, whoever we get in the semi-finals, it's a 2-legged affair. Who knows? And if we get the final, we can take anybody on our day.
I think going to the Carabao Cup this season as well, mate. When you look at the draw, this season, we've spoke about this previously, but this season's a little bit different in the sense that there's a World Cup. So whilst there's been a block of games that they've had to try and squeeze in before the World Cup, they're going to have to do the same. And these sides that have gone far in the Champions League, like the Man Cities, Chelsea's, Liverpool, if they go through, which I think they pretty much have, and Tottenham, if they need to win their last game. If all those 4 sides go through, you've got Man United, who's going to be in the Europa one, along with West Ham and Arsenal. So you've got 7 sides there that are, and if we look at who's left in the competition, Arsenal are in the competition still. Tottenham are in the competition away to Forest. Arsenal at home to Brighton. Brighton could turn Arsenal over. Man City versus Chelsea. So one of them are going to go out.
Yeah.
And then obviously then you look at Man United, Villa. You'd think Man United are would be too strong for them, and then you've got Liverpool Derby. So it does really it does really depend, because you look at some of the other ties as well: Stevenage, Charlton, Bristol, Lincoln, MK Dons, Morecambe, Burnley, Crawley. If we were to win against Palace and then get one of those other sides, you're almost you're in the quarterfinals nearly, aren't you? Semi-finals nearly.
Yeah.
So where the guy said there, the next 3 seasons we might win something, I think it does all depend on a little bit of luck as well, Tony, in my opinion.
But, yeah, absolutely, and obviously players that's brought into the club as well. But I think we'll bring in January, bring in again next summer, and we'll slowly get rid of the ones that we don't want at the club. And it's no disrespect to the likes of Jacob Murphy and Ryan Fraser, but they're not the players that's going to take it to that next level. So there will be players that will come in and replace those, and then those players will go out of the club. But as KLW says, yeah, we could win something the next 3 seasons without a doubt, and that just all depends on who we bring in. But so far, the way we've done our transfer business in January and the summer, it's all been absolutely spot on. The right characters are coming. Okay, you could say Wood's not really done a lot. Some people might say he hasn't. I think, to be fair, he did some good last season, because he helped us when we were in a bit of a dire situation. He scored the equaliser against Southampton, and he scored the winner against Wolves, from the penalty spot, which
the thing is
nerve-wracking in itself, and for him not to have the confidence of putting balls in the back of the net regular, to take that penalty, he took a lot, but he put that penalty away well.
Yeah. I think for me, obviously, I think this is a topic of discussion ongoing every time I go on like a live show or something like that, or you look on social media, Twitter and things, people saying about Chris Wood. Well, I think it's a little bit disrespectful, if I'm being honest, towards him, because it's not his fault that the fee was 25 million. However, we played to a certain way last season because we had one striker, Chris Wood. We didn't have Wilson. We didn't have the new signings. So he came in and he did a job, that Eddie's asked him to do, in terms of the way that you hold the ball up and the way that he brings people into it. We were fairly solid in that period of time when he was doing like his utmost. Now, Wilson's fit. He'd obviously been off. Isak come in, record fee. He's not going to play very many games, but I think he's that type of player that would be there, that if we did need him, he'd be called upon. Now, people are saying, "Oh, we need a striker." I don't think we do, because for me, I'd spend it in a wide area and strengthen that, or strengthen the midfield, because, like, who are you going to buy? And if you get rid of Wood, who are you going to purchase that's going to sit on the bench, because you've got Wilson and you've got Isak in front of you? And then if you've got Almiron on fire, Sam Maximan on fire, so I think it's been a little bit unfair. He gets a little bit unfair criticism. Understandably, his job's to put the ball in the back of the net, but at the end of the day, mate, he's done a job. He's asked come in. We stayed up. That was the main priority, and then we, as you said, we move on and we build. And I think that's the same for some of the other squad players. They're there. They might be a squad player. They might move on, and then we replace them with a little bit better. But it is what it is, isn't it?
Yeah, I totally agree. A creative midfielder, and I think wingers as well. And I think, as long as you've got that strength and depth in the wings, because if you've got a right winger that can come in. If Almiron got injured, for instance, then that's great. But at the moment, if he got injured, you've got Fraser or Murphy, where, you know, in the future, you'd like to have somebody that's a bit better than what those two are put together. And then obviously you can bring that guy straight in as soon as Almiron's out.
Yeah.
And that's what it's all about. Be the same with Maxi once we get another left winger and a quality left winger. He's going to know that if he gets injured and this lad gets in, and this lad plays well, then he's going to lose his place. But he's got to accept that, because at the end of the day, as I've said last night, he's not. The thing with St. Maximin is now he's not at a club where he's like the main guy now. He's now amongst a group of players who play collectively well together, and they're all superstars in their own right, and you know, they're all stars in their own way. So Maxi's got to get used to the fact that he might not play every week, but then he's got to earn that by getting in and saying, right, I'm going to play well on this left wing, and this is my shirt, and nobody's getting it, and that's the way you've got to play.
I think the one thing for him is that if he's fit, the reason why I think he starts is because he offers Newcastle something that we haven't got elsewhere. We haven't got a St. Maximin who's a little bit unpredictable in terms of what he's going to do. And a lot of good sides have got that. They've got that unpredictability where they've got that one player where if it's a tight game and you need that little bit of extra skill. You know what Almiron can do? He runs all day at 100 miles an hour, and he's added to his game now his finishing. So that's really, really good, and long may that continue, because if he continues his rich fame form that he's in at the moment, he won't be dropped because he offers so much more. You need an engine when you're playing in Eddie Howe side, because you need to be the forward press and the defending and the way that we work, as you said before, as a team. I think that's the type of player he looks for. So it'll be interesting about how we go about in the transfer window. But I think I've read a couple of articles about where we're probably going to be quite selective in terms of cherry picking our player that we want. Instead of just trying to buy 3 or 4, we're going to try and go in with quality, because I think that's what we need now. But yeah,
I mean, I know we're doing a famous show, but the way I look at it, I mean, you know, the players that we're looking at, we need some, you know, we need another right winger, really. We need another left winger just to add that little bit extra beef up to the flanks, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, this guy, Madison, I mean, he's going to be perfect in the middle, because, I mean, you know, he's going to give us that creativity that we need, and also it'll take some pressure off Bruno as well. But I can imagine him and Bruno linking up really, really well, and you know, and I think Madison helps get you in the European place.
If you look at this situation, Tony, you look at you say at the moment, right, you've got Longstaff, who's playing exceptionally well, by the way. But you've got Longstaff, you've got Bruno, and you've got Willock. Obviously, if Maxi was fit, Joe Linton would probably be in the middle. Now, if we sign Madison, my middle 3, if you like, in midfield would be Madison, Bruno, and Joe Linton, right? So then you look at who's there as a backup. You'd then have Shelby, Willock, and Longstaff. If you look at the players that we've put that first starting 3 and then those other 3 there, they're quite similar in terms of the front 3 and the back 3 are quite similar. So I think that's good. And then I think he adds a lot of options. If we were to sign someone like Madison, and I think we've got a real shout, because I don't think he's very happy at Leicester.
No, and I don't think he is.
You know, so we'll see. We'll see. But
I mean, this guy hasn't had he hasn't had a great season. He's done all right, but the team's not done well for him. And maybe he needs to move, and hopefully this is somebody we're going for. This guy here on screen, Moussa Diaby of Bayer Leverkusen. They're having a terrible season.
He scored quite a good
goal. He's still chipping
in
with assists.
Didn't he?
Yeah, and he's not a bad player. And you know what? I can see us going back in for him in January. Eddie Howe's already said he wants wingers in January, so I can see going in for him for the right wing. I mean, he's a great talent, and I think he would excel at St James's Park, and he would become a superstar. I mean, and then this guy as well, another highly rated guy, Mudryk,
Oh my God.
Mikhailo Mudryk. I mean, left wing,
Big
look the
offer to
face
get
he's
him.
got.
I think it'd be a big offer to get him in.
It would be a big offer, yeah. I mean, but still,
Marseille
it would be a statement of intent if we got him in as well. I mean, there's options there, and if we don't know what's going on with the target situation at the moment, because it seems to be that is he out of favour with Eddie Howe? If we were to go for a left back or a left wing back, then this guy is a great guy for Stuttgart, and his name is Bruno Sosa. He's Croatian.
Yeah.
And he's highly rated. He's 24, and you'd probably get him for about 20-25 million pound. And he can play left wing back very, very well.
Yeah, I think the situation with Target is that he was a bit not 100% fit at the beginning of the season. And then I think he had a slight tweak or something like that. And then Dan Burns come in. And yes, Dan Burn gets beat for pace by some of these quick wingers because he's 6 foot bloody 100. So therefore, he is quite quick, really. But obviously, these are really quick guys. But I think the way we play with Trippier bombing up on the right-hand side, I've said this many times, Dan Burns slots back into a middle three. So I don't think you can drop Dan Burn because he gives you that flexibility that if you want to bring one of the centre-backs off, like we did against Villa, and then Burn went into the middle, I think, that's why I don't think we really need to look in that position. The position that I feel we need to look at is, as Alan's saying further down in the comments about upgrading the subs bench, we need to look at maybe another central midfielder, wide right player, and then maybe at a push, maybe a young striker or something like that, or a creative player.
What about if we go to Leicester in January and make a decent offer for Maddison? Then do we also test the water because he's only got 6 months on his deal? Do we say let's put an offer in for this guy as well, Tielemans?
I mean, I don't think they'd sign both. And I don't know how that would work with obviously our team, because then Maddison might go even further up. And I don't think Eddie Howe will want to. I mean, he said something the other day about evolving and about having the players right now to play the formation that he's going to do. But if we do start getting further up and going into Europe and things like that, then you are going to need a deeper squad. You are going to need to be able to penetrate teams in a different way and set up a different style. Whereas I think Guardiola said we're a threat because we play one game a week and we can play really, really high intensity. So that's why we've got a bit of a different chance. But I think we'll see.
Yeah. I mean, before I go back on to the next game, I mean, we look at the defence, but defence is really strong. Centre halves are strong, but, Shaw is 30, 31. He's going to get, age is going to catch him up eventually. I'm not saying it is going to at the moment, but it will eventually. We will have to eventually look for a replacement for Shea. He's absolutely brilliant at the minute. I'm not saying he's not brilliant because that's one thing.
You've always
got to look, but you've always got to look and have another defender that can come in that is either just as good as Shea or even better. And that's what you've got to have, that quality and backup. I mean, like City do, Man City have that quality as well. Now, there's one guy who I think would fit the bill well, and his tackling is absolutely spot on. And he plays for Monaco, and his name is Benoit Badiashile.
I think
valued at about £40 million. We did look at him last January until he got an injury, and then we had to pull out of that. But
yeah,
you know, if we were to go back in for him, I think he's only 21, and I mean, do you know what? This guy has got the physique. He's strong. I think you'd cut it in the Premier League, and if he was to be the replacement for Shearer eventually, then him and Botman would grow together as a centre half pair, and I think we would be absolutely dynamite at the back.
Yeah, there's the good thing about the way I think the club are doing it now is they've probably got all these targets and stuff like that that we want to go for, and so will some of the other top clubs as well in Europe. But I think because we've actually stayed in the Premier League, we made a couple of statement signings last year. We've obviously made a couple of statement signings this year. We're actually doing really well in the league. We're now probably seen by these players that were not 100% sure about whether they're going to join, like wanting to come to Newcastle. They now probably sit up and think, I want a bit of this. Like, look at how well some of these players are playing under this coach, under this manager. Look at the stadium when it's rocking. There's not very many places in world football that's better than St. James's when it's rocking like it has been. And it's only going to get more. It's only going to get louder. So I think it's a good time for players to look at the project and go, as one of the guys said earlier on, like to win, potentially win a trophy in the next 3 or 4 years, you'd want to be part of that in the best league in the world against some of the best sides in the world, and you're still challenging, so it's good.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's just one of those wait and see, isn't it? What happens? I mean, so guys, if you like what you're watching, then please hit those like buttons. Helps push the channel up the search settings. And if you're new to the channel, then please subscribe. It's free to do so. Just hit the subscribe button and also hit the bell notification button, and that tells you when a video is uploaded or I become live. Thank you very much. So we'll go into some more comments. So KLW says, if they do sign Madison and the rest of the current midfield are fit, do you see Shelby being a part of the team? Yeah, I think Shelby will still be part of the team. I mean, he might not be a starter week in, week out.
I think
he'll definitely be. Yeah, he'd be a substitute, that's for sure. But he can also be an impact sub as well. So yeah, I definitely think. I definitely think he'll be there, and why not? Gary says Liverpool 0, Napoli 0, Marseille 1, Spurs 0. Oh dear, Spurs losing again.
Spurs. And Mbemba, ex-Newcastle defender, scored for Spurs right on half time.
Oh. Is that the Chancellor Mbemba? That's got about 4 different birth certificates.
As it stands at the moment, yeah, exactly, yeah. As it stands at the moment, Spurs are out as it stands at the moment.
Oh.
Spurs will go into the Europa League as it stands at the moment.
Oh dear.
But yeah, it, like some of the other guys are saying, it's very interesting about Conte. If people are saying Klopp's under pressure, is Conte under pressure? And like the style of football that they play, yes, he's a winner, but the style of football that Tottenham play and the way that he's doing it, he will defend at all costs. And the fact that they're not winning games and he's defending and it's not very attractive, the board at Spurs might be put under pressure to say he might sack because they might let him go because he's only got like until the summer to sign it, like to see whether he's going to sign a contract or not. So it'll be interesting that.
Yeah. So so the next game we're going to go to is this is the 20th of October 1996. So we're going back 26 years ago.
I know what game this is with the date without even showing what the game is. And that's why I'm doing that with my hand.
Yeah. So after losing in the Charity Shield 4-0 in August of that year, we then had Man United in the Premier League, and we went out and we absolutely dismantled them. We beat them 5-0 at St. James's Park, and that was payback for what they'd done to us in the Charity Shield. I mean, we didn't play that great in the Charity Shield, but we made sure this time we played really well. And when you think after 12 minutes, we scored through Darren Peacock's header. Now, there was a lot of contention over that because they didn't know if it had crossed the lane. The linesman said it had crossed the lane. And even the commentators, Andy Gray and Martin Taylor, were both like, I don't think that's crossing it, Andy. And when at the time back in 96, when you think the technology we have now compared back to then, they actually zoomed in on the ball and Andy Gray went, oh dear, yes, it is actually over the lane. And we went 1-0 up. And after that, we just did not look back. I mean, the Man United fans were in the corner at the time. They were giving Shearer a lot of stick. But when Shearer scored, he got them back and he went over and, gave them all that in the corner after what they did. I mean, Ginola, he scored the second goal. I mean, that was a fantastic finish from Ginola.
Yeah, he rolled Neville, didn't he? And just put it in the top corner, far top corner. I mean, if you look at that team, you look at that team then, Tony, in terms of the attacking presence and flair they had, it was unbelievable. The defense at times was a bit shaky with some of the players that were playing, but oh my God, the attacking players in that team then was just unbelievable.
Sorry, Carl.
I was going to say it's a shame that Shearer and Ferdinand only got that one season together, really, because it was a good partnership. And I know Ferdinand was only there for a couple of years, but by God, he made an impact. And I suppose that's why people are fondly remember him as Sir Les, because of just a likeable guy he was, and he just left it out all on the pitch. But that front two, with Beardsley in there as well, Ginola, Batty, Rob Lee, just quality, mate, just quality. But the third goal was the Ferdinand header, wasn't it? That hit the crossbar in the second half. That was when Shearer did that, because Shearer whips the ball in and Ferdinand hits it against the crossbar. It bounces off the floor and then goes back in under the goals. That was 3-0. And then you had the next one, which was Beardsley took a shot from outside of the box. Keeper made an unbelievable save, went to Ferdinand, he saved that, and then Shearer was basically at the back post to give it 4-0. And then I'll let you talk through probably the best goal of the game.
Yeah, our Belgian centre-half, Philippe Albert, I mean, when he scored goals, Albert, he scored quality goals. I mean, I remember he scored a quality goal for Belgium in the World Cup in 94 as well. But yeah, I mean, that goal, I mean, he just strode forward and then saw Schmeichel was off his line and thought, I'm going to try this. Boom, over the top. What a beautiful chip. So exquisite, straight and sailed over the head of him and into the back of the net. And I mean, after that game, Albert actually said if it'd been 1 or 2-0, he wouldn't have tried that chip. But he says at 4-0, there was nothing to lose. And when no Man United player come to challenge me, I thought, why not, and went for it. He says, and it was a special moment to him. I mean, it was an audacious chip. And I mean, when you think at the time, Schmeichel was one of the best goalkeepers in world football, and I mean, to beat Schmeichel like that was absolutely brilliant. And I mean, the team we had that day, the late Pavel Srnicek in goal, Steve Watson and Warren Barton came on as a sub. Then we had Beresford, Peacock, Albert, Batty, Lee Clark came on for Rob Lee, Beardsley, Shearer, Ferdinand, Ginola. I mean, what a team. And and rightly so, we deserved that win. And
I don't know how many times. I don't know how many times you've watched it back, Tony, but I know it's like 1996, so it's a good number of years ago now in terms of when the game was. But I've watched that game back. I think it's on. I think Gary's just said the full channel's on YouTube. I think it's on the new NUFC. NUFC like archive or whatever. So I have watched that a couple of times, and I don't know if you can remember, but when we had the lockdown, in the lockdown, it was every Saturday, I think, when there was no football on, when the season was like stopped or whatever. NUFC at 3:00 used to play a game in its entirety of classic games. So
Yeah.
and it was actually with a commentary, and I remember just sitting back thinking, oh, just imagining that it was actually the game, like you were watching it live, and it was a brilliant game. It's probably one of the best games that I've seen in my lifetime as being a 40-year-old Newcastle fan. It's up there with one of the best games that I've ever seen in terms of what we've done.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
against the opposition as well, mate.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, it was brilliant. I mean, and who can forget that? It's just, yeah. I mean, it's just, it still feels like it was only yesterday, but no, it was absolutely brilliant, and yeah, one of the best wins that I've ever seen Newcastle. Can't knock it really.
Brilliant game.
Oh yeah, absolutely a fantastic game that was. So the next game that I'm going to come to, and this game was the 17th of September 1997, and again this was in front of a sellout crowd, and we were put in a hard group after the qualifying round. This was in the Champions League. We were second at the time in '96, so brought on a UEFA Cup place. But because we finished second again in '97, the rules changed, so we got a Champions League place.
Yeah,
and we saw Dinamo Zagreb in that qualifying round from Croatia.
Yeah,
and the group we were put in was Dynamo Kiev, PSV Eindhoven, and FC Barcelona, with Luis Figo, Rivaldo, Sonny Anderson in their ranks, and they were the first one up on Tyneside. Now, this was obviously under Kenny Dalglish after Keegan had moved on as manager. But yeah, I mean, that game, I mean,
did we have
fantastic.
Did we have a certain Colombian striker in the ranks?
This guy here, Faustino Asprilla.
Yeah. Did you remember? Did you remember, Tony, that after that game, in some of the national press, they had statistic about how long that Tino was in the air for that header, and it showed you like some of the sportsmen that had leapt and been in the air, and I can't remember if he was ahead or just behind, but he was like on par with Michael Jordan in terms of the basketball legend, in terms of his leap. And if you watch it back, you look at his leap and how long he looked like he was in the air for. It just looked like he was in the air for forever. And that is one of the best headers that I've ever seen. Keith Gillespie had a worldie of a game against obviously that a quality. What was he called now? Their left back or their right back. He was unreal. But it was that was a great game as well, mate. That was unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean that was in front of 35,274 fans. I mean, the first came from the penalty spot after Asprilla was brought down by Rudy Hesp, the goalkeeper, and he put home the spot kick. And then the second one was from the swashbuckling of winger Keith Gillespie, who left Sergei Borwan with twisted blood before crossing for Asprilla to bury the header at the roof of the net. So that must be the guy you're on about, Sergei Bowrin. I don't know how you pronounce his name. And then Keith Gillespie again rode down and crossed for Asprilla to crash home his third of the night, and Defnan wrote the least. We were 3-0 up, and then they come back to 3-2. Luis Enrique scored as well for Barcelona that night. And then Figo made a 3-2 in the 89th minute, but we hung on for a famous victory. And Rob Lee was the captain of the night. And Rob Lee actually said that was one of the greatest nights in the club history. Yeah. And every player involved was proud to be part of that.
I agree.
You know,
I agree. It's one of them. If you talk to any like non-Newcastle fan and ask them what is a memory of a great game that Newcastle's played, you know the two games that we've just said in
yeah,
the last like 30 years or whatever would certainly be up there. If you ask all the people, it might be some of the FA Cup games and the UEFA Fairs Cup, what you mentioned earlier on. That'll be
yeah,
a game in history. People might mention the FA Cup when we got beat off Hereford. They'll remember that. But ultimately, like these games that you're mentioning there, it's one of those ones that will go down in folklore at the end of the day, isn't it?
yeah, absolutely. And I mean, obviously, Rob Lee was then asked about Tino being the star of the show, and he says, of course, Tino was star of the show. He says, that's the best I've ever seen him play. He says, not only scored 3 goals, he says, but he also worked very hard for the team as well.
Yeah.
And that was what Rob Lee said.
I've got a funny story about Tino. Got a funny story about Tino if you want to hear it. So I went to this dinner. I think John Beresford were there, and you know John Beresford likes a sherbet. Anyway, they were talking about coming. They'd been to an away game or whatever, or they were on the way to an away game. And back in the buses, then they used to have like a TV near the back, which you could put your own videos and whatnot on. Anyway, these cars are driving past and like beeping the horns and flashing all the rest of it. And Keegan's at the front going, "What's going on?" Yeah. Anyway, he goes to the back of the bus, and all the lads are watching this thing. And it's a bit of a, let's just call it a little bit of a blue movie that they're watching. And Keegan's like, you can't bloody watch that on the bus, this, that, and the other. And he turns around and he goes, "It's all right, Gaffer. It's me wife."
Gosh.
So John Beresford told everybody that story at this do we went to a good few years ago, and everybody was absolutely creased. So yeah, that was a great game.
My God, that's just that's a good one, isn't it? I mean, yeah, there is things like I know Asprey come out once, didn't he? And he said, even though he lived in Northumberland, he says he still had to sleep with a gun under his pillow because in case he got, in case anybody came over from Colombia or whatever. So yeah, it's just crazy, isn't it?
Another world.
But the guy was a good player, though, a great player. Yeah. Alan says, lads, who do you think was the best player, Ginola or Chris Waddle? I mean, Chris Waddle, he was a good player. Don't get me wrong. Back in the 80s, I mean, he played really well. But the problem in the 80s, we were a selling club, so we sold him on.
If you're talking about
he went to Tottenham, then he went to Marseille. But
I
David
think
Ginola is a different player to Waddle. I look at it and I think, I mean, Chrissy Waddle was a great crosser of the ball. I mean, drop that shoulder, get past the right back and get that ball over. And he used to put some tremendous crosses in. So I'd have to say, I would probably side more with, I think Ginola was probably more technical than what Waddle was. But I would say Waddle was probably one of the best left wingers in the country. I mean, why he got in the England team as well. He was one of the greatest left wingers in the country. So I would say I sort of favour Waddle. And I look at Ginola and I think, yeah, but Ginola weren't too bad. I mean, £2.5 million at the time from PSG weren't a bad signing. And then I also want to throw Laurent Robert into that mix as well, because I'll tell you what, that guy didn't score many tap-ins. A lot of his goals were screamers, and he had a wand of a left foot. Laurent Robert did. I'll tell you what, I wouldn't mind Laurent Robert in this team now, because I would, I mean, yes, the guy used to not really track back a lot, and he used to sometimes go missing in games, but sometimes he didn't. Sometimes you just knew he was there all of a sudden because the ball would come over and he just hit it with his left foot and it'll be boom in the back of the net. Yeah. So yeah, that's 3 different left-sided players there. But if I had to pick a favourite, I would probably say Waddle just about edges that.
I think if you're, I'll look at it, or I'll look at the players, the two players I mentioned. I'll look at their careers, and I'd probably say Waddle did it for me. He probably did it at a higher level for a longer period of time. We did, like you said, Newcastle were a selling club at the time, and we only got glimpses of how special of a talent he was. It wasn't only until he went to Marseille and Spurs that he really excelled and he was a real player. Whereas we had Ginola sort of in the twilight of the back end of his career, I feel like. I think he might have been 30 or something like that when we signed him, which isn't really his twilight, but it's coming towards the back end. And I thought he performed quite well early on. He was that extravagant. So if you talk in Newcastle, then you'd say Ginola probably did more in terms of excitement and played in a better side and in his career. But if you look at the two careers of those two players, I think personally, if you looked at them both in their prime, I'd probably would have said Waddle, like you, and just because of one, he was a local lad anyway, and two, he was bloody brilliant.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, absolutely brilliant. KLW says Tino was in the air that long. Newcastle Airport, phone Dalglish, and that's what was happening. Yeah. And he says
the same. Just
a call from that. Yeah, he says, what time was he due to land? Yeah, probably, yeah, because I mean, he was up there for quite a while, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Chris Banks says, Gascoigne, Ginola, Waddle, Ferdinand were all sold to Spurs. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, Gascoigne, we sold him for 2 million. What a talent, you know. And I mean,
he's the one player that I wished Newcastle at the time. I wish we were it was a different scenario where we weren't a selling club. I just wish we hadn't sold him, because ultimately for me, I know again, similar to Waddle, mate, he didn't have the best years of his career, I feel like, at Newcastle. But seeing him and I've read his autobiographies and I've watched the documentaries about him, but he's my personal, like, all-time favourite player of all time. I think he's the best English player we've ever had, Paul Gascoigne, in terms of how much of a genius he was. It was just a shame he had other stuff going on in his life with how his head was and all the rest of it. But, you know, moving to Spurs, what Chris has said then, along with all of those players, you know that Waddle had to be sold. Ferdinand didn't want to leave, but he pretty much got told he was going. He didn't want to leave. Ginola, I'm not sure about the story about why he went to Spurs, but Gascoigne, again, was sold because we obviously needed the money. But I wish that he had went to Man United instead of Spurs.
Yeah,
because I think Ferguson would have looked after him better in terms of being a much better man manager. But for me, he's the greatest English player we've ever had, and it just shows you the types of players who come out and who are English legends have come out and said the same thing. You know, the likes of Rooney and stuff like that have come out and said and Rooney's a little decent player for England, but he's come out and said Gascoigne was, you know, the best.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I would have preferred Gaza to go to have gone to Man United rather than gone to Spurs, but that was at the time, you know, and it happened. So we just had to take that at the time. I mean, The next game I'm going to go on to, and yesterday it was its anniversary yesterday, and that's and I was at this game as well because I was season ticket holder at the time, and it was Halloween. It was a frightening day for the Sunderland, and it was 5-1 to Newcastle United. I mean, we all remember Kevin Nolan's chicken dance. You know, well, don't forget that. We were 3 up at half time. Nolan scored 26 and 34 minutes, and then Amiobi scored a penalty in 45 plus 4 minutes of added on time. Then again, Amiobi scored in the 70th minute. And then Nolan scored the 5th in his hat-trick in the 75th minute. And then Darren Bent replied for Sunderland at the end of the game. Titus Bramble, ex-player, he was sent off. Titus Shambles, Phil Dowd, I think the referee at the time got it right. He got everything right. Our team that day was Tim Krull in goal, Fabrizio Colacini, Jose Enrique, Mike Williamson, Danny Simpson, Kevin Nolan, the captain, Joey Barton, Jonas Gutierrez, the late Jake Tiote, Andy Carroll, and Amiobi. And then substitute for Newcastle came on was Niall Ranger in the 86th minute for Amiobi for the Mackem Slayer. But yeah, I mean, that was a great game. 51,988 there. I mean, our stats that day was 66% possession to us, 12 attempts on target, 4 off target, 8 corners, 8 fouls. Compared to the Mackems, they had 5 shots on target, 6 off target, 6 corners, and 18 fouls, so 10 more than us. I mean, they even had Bolos ending on the bench for them. But yeah, I mean, that day, and Jordan Henderson was playing for them. I mean, that day, we were absolutely on fire against them. And at the end of that, we finished, after that game, we were then 7th in the Premier League, just a point behind Tottenham in 5th place and 3 points off a Champions League spot. So, I mean, that was back then in 2010. But I remember that game really well. And, we tore Sunderland apart, literally. And, and it was Steve Bruce in charge of Sunderland as well at the time.
To say, so many years later, then we would have had him. It's like, what the hell? That was a Halloween fright having Steve Bruce on it.
Wasn't it just? But I mean, that game, that was a tremendous game. I remember that game. And I'll never forget that game. I mean, to win 5-1 against your local rivals in such devastating way. Chris Hughton, that guy was a great manager for us. Yes, he's not done it really much since he's left us. But, but I think
he was another one, mate. He was another one.
Trigger on too quick.
He was another one, mate, who I think he was another one who was harshly treated by the club in terms of obviously getting the sack and whatnot. But yeah. So
that was because we got beat 3-1 off West Brom, and he got the sack. But I mean, when you think about it, we'd beaten Villa 6-0. We'd beaten Sunderland 5-1. The guy wasn't doing anything wrong. And we all know after that, Mr. Pardew came into the club, didn't he? So, but yeah, all in all, that game, what a great game that was. I mean, can you remember that game, Carl?
Yeah. I mean, you're getting into my, again, being more regular and going to the games around this period of time and being able to be drink legally in pubs and watch games. But yeah, it was, it's always, I had this chat yesterday and it was like naming sides that you don't like the most and stuff. And I said, I still dislike Sunderland, but I would want them in the Premier League so we could have the derby because
yes,
we went on that run where we lost 5 or 6 in a row, or whatever it is, which they like to keep reminding us. But I think it's such an exciting thing, Derby Day. You're getting meeting up with all your mates that you've not seen for ages. You're putting the YouTube songs on about Dirty Monkey Mackem, and all the songs that you find on YouTube, and you're getting ready, and it's Peter Reid's got a monkey's head and all that stuff, and it's just good, and they give it back to us at the end of the day. They give us it, we give them it, and I do miss the derby. I might not miss the results where we've got beaten, but I would certainly enjoy playing Sunderland now because we're at polar polar opposites in terms of how we're run as a club now, and it would be good to have those back. But I think they've got a lot of work to do to get back into the Premier League.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's just, yeah. I mean, yeah, they've got a lot of work to do. But it's if they did come back up, if I'm honest, I would think, to be honest, we would smash Sunderland. If I'm really honest, I think we would beat them well and truly. But yeah, I mean, it's just crazy to think, isn't it? I mean, if they ever get back in the Premier League, but it's going to take a long time for them to get back up. I think,
Yeah.
I know they say they've got this guy who's got money, but I've not really seen them spend much money, to be fair. So
it took them a while to get out of League One. I think Sunderland need to be realistic, like what we've been realistic. Well, some of the fans have. But I think Sunderland need to be realistic that if this guy if whoever they've got now does start splashing the cash, then they might be able to accelerate that. But the Championship's a real difficult league to get out of. And it might, even if they don't have huge investments, then they might end up being a steady Championship club for the rest of their days. But they might build, because you know what the North East's like. And Sunderland, to their credit, do have a good youth setup.
yeah.
So, they might be able to bring some stars through, like the Pickfords of the world, like the Hendersons, and they can sell them on and make money. They've got a young lad in goal at the moment who I mentioned again. I've mentioned this previously, but it's one of my good mates who I've known for years, Stephen, and his nephew plays in goal for them, Anthony Patterson, he's called, and he is a really good goalkeeper. He's a really good goalkeeper, mate. Like, I know based on what Stephen's telling me, Spurs are sniffing around him to be like the second stroke third keeper for those in the Premier League. So they've scouted him so many times. I know he went to Doncaster on loan a couple of times, and they loved him down in Doncaster because he saved a couple of penalties in big games. But he's a good goalkeeper. And whilst obviously you don't want to see Sunderland do well, but you do, I want him to do well, because I want him to get, like, ultimately he's a Geordie, mate. Sunderland. This is why it's so important for the club at Newcastle to get the academy right. It's because we'll lose talent like him to our local rivals, and we didn't treat him very well. Newcastle never treated him well at all, and obviously, by all accounts, he was snapped up by Sunderland at a very, very young age, and they sing now he's one of our own. Well, he's not, like, because he's from fucking Wallsend, or he was born where, obviously, like, I don't think he was actually born in Wallsend, but he was born in Newcastle, and we unfortunately we let him go. So I do want the derbies back.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'll just go through a couple of comments. Alan says, I remember seeing a player called Tony Green. What a player. Yeah, I've heard he was a great player as well, Tony Green. I haven't seen him play personally, but yeah.
He was the second most expensive player behind Malcolm McDonald, believe it or not, in the same year. Apparently they signed him from I think it was from Blackpool or something like that, or Luton Town. But yeah, by looking at his stats at Newcastle, he seemed like he was a canny player, like. And he's been inducted into the Hall of Fame as well.
Yeah, Gary says, if Sunderland did come up, would they stay up? I'm not so sure. Depends on depends what they would do in the transfer market, but I would probably say it depends. It depends.
Yeah.
It's a dodgy one because they may not file enough quality players to stay up. So, and Alan says, we will all be at Wembley very, very soon to lift the cups. Yeah, absolutely, Alan. Let's hope so.
Fingers crossed.
So the final game I'm going to go into, and this one was 11 years ago, on the 5th of February, and again, I was at this game, and I remember streams of fans leaving after 18 minutes, and people in the chat may remember him. You may remember him, Carl, but he used to sit just along. He sat about 4 or 5 seats away from me with his mate, and you've probably seen him on TV, but there's a lad, I mean, there's a younger lad doesn't know, but this guy, I mean, I'm going back from like 10 years ago, 20 years ago, but he used to always stand up and he had NUFC written on his belly.
Oh, yeah.
Now, this guy's a transport manager called Keith, and he's a lovely guy, a really nice guy. You know, couldn't meet a nicer guy. There was him and his mate, and when we were down, we were 3-0 down after 18 minutes, and they were leaving as well. And he turned to me and he says, "Come on, Tony," he says, "you're not going to sit here and watch this bloody crap all game." He says, "We're going down the pub." He says, "We've had enough of this." And I said, "Oh, I says, well, I'll see what happens, I'll stay." And well, so glad I did stay. I mean, I even said to a guy in the when I was standing waiting to get a hot chocolate, I said, "Even if we get a goal or two, I'll be happy in the second half. At least we'll have tried." So anyway, this is our famous game when we played Arsenal at St James's Park. And so by 26 minutes, we were 4-0 down with goals from Theo Walcott, Johan Giroud, and 2 from Robin van Persie. Now, that at 4-0, you think at half-time, well, actually, we're lucky getting to half-time, 4-0 down, not a bad score. And then you think, if we can get a couple of goals back, then yeah, that would be great. But I always say the game, I mean, in the second half, the game was really turned on its head. And there was a guy sitting next to me, and I just said, "Why is this player so stupid?" So there he is on screen. It's Abu Diaby.
Oh, yeah.
Not only does he have a tangle with Joey Barton, but then he also gets a hold of Nolan and pushes Nolan to the ground as well, right in front of the referee, Phil Dowd.
Sent off.
And Phil Dowd, without a shadow of a doubt, you're going off, mate, because that's a red card all day. I mean, your team's 4-0 up. Why lose your head like that? Why? And that's what I said to this guy. Why on earth has he done this? It's absolutely stupidity. You don't need to be getting yourself sent off, because I think Nolan went over to try and calm the situation, and he got a hold of Nolan and shoved Nolan to the ground as well.
I know that Wenger at the time wasn't very happy, was he, that he'd got sent off?
But he didn't blame him apparently for it.
No.
But to me, if that was one of our players getting sent off like that for something stupid and we ended up getting a draw out of a game, I wouldn't be very happy either.
No, exactly.
But I just thought, why on earth has he lost his head like that? But then, to our benefit, after that, we got, Barton scored the comeback late on because, the first 26 minutes and then the final 21 minutes of that game was just a complete and utter shock because I didn't see I couldn't believe what I was seeing in front of my eyes. Barton got a penalty after a foul on Leon Best. And then 6 minutes later after that, we was down to 2 because Best slammed home loose from close range and made it 4-2. But before that, Best had a goal ruled out for an offside. And I remember watching it on Match of the Day, and it wasn't offside. He was actually onside, so it should have stood, but it didn't. Unfortunately, there's no VAR back then. And then with 6 minutes left, we got another penalty. That was conceded by Koscielny, and that was for a foul on Williamson, which looked a bit dubious. But we didn't care because we got a penalty. And again, Barton, cool as a cucumber, straight down the middle, straight past Chesney. And I remember there was a fight in the net between him and Chesney because Barton wanted to grab the ball straight away and get it back to the centre circle. Because that happened after the first penalty. And then him and Chesney again had another ruckus in the net. And then we all know what happened after that. The 88th minute, our super Ivorian player, Sheikh Tiote, God bless his soul, 30-yard volley into the roof of the net. To take the roof off the Gallagher into the back of the net. I mean, absolutely fantastic. To come back and draw 4-4 like that, and it was the first time it had been done where a team had been 4-0 down at half time and actually come back to 4-4. And I always remember that celebration because I was in the Sir John Hall stand end, and he came running right up there, and then everybody leapt on him, even Steve Harper. It was absolutely fantastic. And then just before the end, we could have actually won that game because Nolan just shaved the post with his shot. But that was an absolute fantastic game. And that's one of the best comebacks I've ever seen from us. And to actually witness that live as well. I mean, if I'd have put the bet on that half time for a draw, it was 80-1 at the time when I looked. If I'd put a draw on that, I could have made some money out of that. And I wish I had have now. But and then I always remember we come out the stadium and the Arsenal fans were walking down the other side and the police were standing on the stairs and that. And, and the Newcastle fans were singing, "Oh, you effed it up at 4-0, and because we were so happy. And the Arsenal fans, that's when the Arsenal fans started trying to turn on us Newcastle fans because they didn't like what we were singing. They were outraged by it because we'd got this draw and because we were lavishing it up. So the Arsenal fans were starting to push the police on the stairs and trying to get past the police. They were absolutely stupid. Honestly, they were absolutely ridiculous. And as I was walking down, I remember there was one Arsenal fan, he said to me, "I'll see you." He said, "I want to have you, mate." And I went, "Oh, I'll see you at the end." And when I got the end, he was gone by then. And I mean, that wasn't the heat of the moment. And I said, "I'll see you at the end." And I thought, what am I bloody doing here? But I didn't see him, he'd gone. So I think he must have just thought, "Oh, I'm not going to tackle him. I'm gone." But no, that was one of the great comebacks that I've ever seen.
It's one of them games that you always say it feels like a loss for the team that was in front and of conceding it. It feels like a win for the team that's come back. And I think that you couldn't be any more further from the truth in terms of obviously that particular game, because like you said, 4-0 down to get 4-4 with a superb volley by Tiote. And yeah, it was a great game, and that rounds it off nicely in terms of obviously classic games, doesn't it? Really ending with such a great comeback.
And there's the man himself, Mr. Sheikh Tiote. I mean, when you look at that, £3.5 million we paid for him.
Yeah, he was great player.
What a bargain.
Great player.
Such a shame what happened to him, cardiac arrest in China. So sad when all that news came through. It's nice to see his son actually still goes to the football matches as well. And he'll always be held in high regard at Newcastle. And I mean, he's always remembered for that goal as well against Arsenal. And I mean, it was a fantastic finish on the volley. And and cue the mad celebrations at the end. But yeah, absolutely fantastic. And I'm sure he's looking down at us now, Sheikh Tiote, and thinking, "My God, I wish we had these owners," because at the time when he was there, he was absolutely brilliant. But I'm sure he's probably looking down thinking, "Yes, Newcastle are going to finally be where they deserve to be." And
let's hope so, mate. Let's hope so.
But no, that was the best one to end with, I thought. But yeah, did you enjoy that one tonight, Carl?
Yeah, mate, I did. Yeah, it was good. I mean, I was I didn't get on in time because I was actually putting together my new bed. So I've been in my room putting together my new bed. So I'm looking forward to sleeping on it tonight. And I hope it's comfortable enough. All these brilliant games that we've played. Let's just hope that there's many more famous games to come, mate, that you can look back on this show and say, "Oh, we've now been able to add this game, that game, and that's life, isn't it? There's always another great game that can come along. So
yeah, but we always like to look at nostalgia, look back in history as well, and it's always nice to relive historic moments as well.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, just before you go, before we wrap up, where can people find you on your socials?
So on my socials, obviously it's at Jody Carl, and you can just find us on Twitter on there. I'm dotting about. I've got something coming in the new year, hopefully, that I'll announce later on. But that's to do with like a bit of a show, a bit like yourself, what you've got, but a bit of a twist on it, where it's going to be, mainly all Newcastle chat, like what you do, but also a bit of a twist and a little bit of a music angle on it as well, where there'll be chat about artists past and present and stuff. So mainly all football, but a slight bit of music on there. But yeah, you can find us on Twitter at Jody Carl.
Oh, sounds like it'll be interesting. I'll have to have a watch of that then as well when that gets up and running. With me, you can find me down there, Tony31 on Twitter. Give me a follow and I'll follow you back. And also on this channel, it's all Black and White TV. It's been going for nearly a fortnight now, and it's not doing too bad. The show's grown a little bit, and it'll take time, but it'll get there. And eventually, when it gets there,
Good. Thanks for having us back on again, Tony. And I'm always
no problem.
Always around to come on.
Yeah. KLW says, great show, lads. Thank you very much. Yeah. Alan says, Tiote, what a player. Wasn't he just? Yeah, absolutely. And Chris says, great show, Tony and Carl. Excellent chat. Thank you very much, Chris.
No worries,
but yeah, guys, if you like what you see, please hit the likes buttons. That helps push me up the search settings and makes people find the channel easier. If you haven't yet, then please hit the subscribe button. It's free to do so. And also hit the bell notification. That'll notify you when anything comes on. But if you haven't subscribed, then please do. And it helps my channel grow as well, which is absolutely brilliant. So thank you again, Carl, for coming on.
No problem, mate.
No, that's no problem at all. And then I'll let you get back to sorting your bed out. And
and I'll speak to you soon, mate.
Yeah, but for now, it's a goodbye to everybody in the chat and have a good evening.
Cheers, everybody.